right, welcome to the podcast. I'm Rob Mallan. I've got a very special guest today that it's a real privilege to have. I've known him for a long time, and this guy's a real inspiration. I've just watched his life evolve and expand, and he is doing amazing things and continues to do amazing things. His name is Javen Campbell. His latest single is Love of My Life. He's got a book out called Do It Now. He's got a podcast out called the Do It Now Podcast. He's the pastor of the Now Church. We're going to be talking about the Now mindset in just a minute. He's also an actor, a producer, a songwriter, a community activist, and a mentor. And he's also a very good friend. Podcast today.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited and proud of what you're doing and hitting topics and subjects like this that allows for people to better their life. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Since I've known you, you've always had, a now mindset. When I first met you, you didn't really use that terminology, but your actions spoke louder actually than your words. And I remember, at a particular time in your life, you're at the height of, ministry. You were doing all kinds of things, and, you weren't looking for a job. I mean, people were looking for you actually, and you decided to walk away from your comfort zone and actually step into your discovery zone. And people were scratching their head. And I don't even know if you were scratching your head, but then just a couple years later, manifestation started to happen. You went from being a guy directing a choir, a guy from, creating albums to this. Now you're an actor. I mean, how does that happen? Where did you always want to be an actor? Was that always in your heart? Or is that just something that's evolved over time?
No, I think it was something that evolved over time. It was something, but I always say, if you pay attention, God gives you little glimpses or little hints when you're younger. But, like all people, we get busy or we get distracted by whatever's going on, the small things. And so you don't pick up on it, So in college, I took acting, took theater and took a couple of classes for extra credit. Actually, that's really the only reason why I took it, just to get extra credit to graduate. And while in there, had great success. I remember the teacher saying to me, "Hey man, you should take this serious. You could really do something with this." And I remember honestly blowing him off, like, "Yeah, that's not in my future." Only the years later, to have to revisit that. So I think it was somewhere in there, but I certainly, by the time we met, that was nowhere on my radar.
So how do you go from all of a sudden, okay, I'm just gonna shift from my comfort zone of I've got this great ministry that I'm doing, I've got multiple things that are happening. Now I'm just gonna ship out and go to LA and achieve my dream. And what was it, like a year or two later? I mean, you actually were, you went from not having any acting opportunities at all to actually being on a big screen. Was it like 2 years or 3 years?
Yeah, about a 2-year period, two and a half year period. First been 05. So yeah, that would have been 2 years. I don't know, Rob, to be honest with you, it was really just about, I think we all have these dreams and things that are waking us up late at night, and these things that are agitating us constantly. And we look at them as a negative, right? Because we're at this job, we're at this level. We don't see any manifestation of that around maybe where we live. Maybe somebody's watching this and they live in backwoods Tennessee, or they may live somewhere in the Midwest where there's no manifestation. So, but yet there's still this frustration that's kind of eating at them. So that's what it's like. You'll have these frustrating things eating at you. So, in my situation, it was just about, enough is enough. I just need to get out. I just need to do it. If I don't do it now, it's never going to happen.
Right?
Yeah. So I just kind of finally answered that little nagging thing to say, you know what, it's time to do it. So I think we all have that. I really do. I just think we perceive them in a negative way. We think that if we want more, that's being greedy. We think that if we desire bigger, that's fantasizing. That's not our reality. But honestly, if you begin to respect those nagging little voices, hey, you should open up that bakery. Yeah, hey, listen, you should open up that car shop, or you should go after that, tennis career, whatever. I'm telling you, you'll be surprised what can happen in 2 years.
Well, looking back now, I mean, and you've come so much further than, One Night with the King. I mean, there's so much more that's happened in between that time and now. I mean, do you look back and ever think, if I had not taken those steps, I wouldn't be here right now? And if yes, what could you say to somebody that, they're about to take a big leap and they can't see the next step. They can't see that outcome. What would you say? How'd that work for you? And what would you say to someone else who might be about to take that big leap themselves?
Yeah, you asked a very important question. You said, what was my mindset like during that time? I'll be honest with you. I did not think I was not going to make it. I did not
You knew
think.
it, didn't you?
I knew it. I knew it. I didn't think, what if it's not going to work out? I didn't think, oh, this is a big step. I didn't look at it that way. So maybe that's the point. I didn't look. I guess if you keep looking at everything like it's a big step and it's oh my God, and this might be the end, then yeah, I guess you probably would never do nothing. And I guess you probably would play everything real safe and therefore get real safe results. But when you kind of go after whatever it is you're going after, and you go, hey, listen, I know this is going to work,
Yeah.
and I'm head first. You kind of go at it a little bit more aggressively. Like when I left Tampa years ago, I went and I sold my then home. I put whatever I could in a storage, and then from the storage into the moving truck, and then I drove, cross country. These are real stories. This is not this is not
I
something
love it, man.
I'm making up. Like I had a little BMW. I put that on the back of I hooked that on the back of the rental truck.
I remember BMW.
I drove all the way to Los Angeles. And Rob, I lived at the Holiday Inn on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City for almost 2 weeks. This is before Wi-Fi. This is before GPS, all of that stuff. And you said, you didn't even have laptops. You had to be rich to have a laptop. So, you talk about setting up big desktop computers and getting online and finding a place to live and all of that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, I was never in my headspace. I was just excited. I was just like, we're doing it. I'm happy, and it didn't matter to me about. That's the other thing. You can't make moves. You can't make moves in your now worried about what people are going to think. I feel like
that's right. Talk about that for just a minute, man, because you're really actually really good at this, and you have been good at this when it comes to not concerning yourself about what people think, and you just continue to move forward. Just talk about that for just a minute. I think that's a really, really powerful topic.
I think it's something that if you're human and in your right mind, it is something you're going to deal with. It's going to challenge you every day. There's always the pressure of trying to fit in. There's always the pressure of whatever group of people that you grew up around. Okay, I'm going to go all the way out on a limb here. We didn't grow up Mormon. We didn't grow up Muslim or some of the other really, really strict religions. So what they think about us doesn't matter to us. And the only reason why is because we're not in those circles our parents, our family, etc. So that doesn't matter to us. It's very easy. If somebody said to you, hey, listen, these Mormon people over here are saying X, Y, and Z about you, you would go, who cares, because they don't matter to me. What if you did the same thing about, your people, the people that you grew up with, the people that are in your circle? What if you just said, who cares? Not disrespectfully, but just like the same way you feel about people that don't know you or you're not concerned about. What if you did that about your own life? If you did that about your own life, you would do more of what God has called you to do in your now. And I think that's a mentality that you've got to, and again, it's something we all deal with. And I'm not going to tell you that just comes naturally. You have to really work on it. So in other words, if
look, basically you got to build some muscle in this area, right? You've got to continue to do this over and over again, because like it just seems like it's automatic. You're just on go, boom, just happens. Have you always been that way when it comes to this? Or is this something that takes you some time to develop?
No, it takes time to develop. You just started you practice, practice make perfect. You're a fitness guy. You know this. When you do something repetitiously, eventually it becomes part of your nature. So when you start thinking about what this person is going to say and you go, who cares? When you start thinking about what this person will say and you say to yourself, who cares? And if you keep doing that on a regular basis, eventually you don't care.
Where did you get? I mean, I know. Is it 9 brothers and sisters you have?
8. I have 7 brothers and 5 sisters.
Okay, 7 brothers and 5 sisters. And you were where were you? You were the baby?
I'm at the bottom. I got 1 sister under me, so number 12.
Okay, so how much of this did this play a role in you having a now mentality?
It's huge.
Now mentality. I mean, for real. Like,
It's
I mean, did you have to fit? I mean, you had a whole posse telling you what to do, pretty much, right?
exactly. You're absolutely right. So in the book, Do It Now, my book, Do
Talk
It Now.
about that.
So I talk about that in the book. When you grow up with that many people in the same household, and we should mention that, all my brothers and sisters from the same mom and dad, you talk on the same roof. I know them very well. They know me very well. I saw their mistakes. They saw my mistakes. You're talking about, and when you're that far at the bottom, you're being disciplined by all the older ones. So you got about five different parents. It's a lot. Some people are sports. Some people are music. Some people are business. So I got a chance. And when you grow up in a big family like that, you get a chance to see the world at home up front. Because just because you're from the same mom and dad don't mean you're the same people. So I got to see all the different personalities. I got to see all the temperaments. I got to see all the ebbs and flows. And it makes you start going, okay, it's like a train going by real fast. And you go, okay, which card am I going to get on? All right. You start going, okay, who am I going to be in the midst of all these people? Who is Javen? And that causes you to start this now revelation and this now journey. My dad used to say all the time at our church, my dad was a pastor, a bishop at church. He pastored many churches, but he'd always say his slogan was, the Lord is blessing us right now. He would say that. Rob, when I tell you, he was that all the time. The Lord is blessing us right now. Never knew what that meant. Never knew how that was going to play such a great revelation in my life many years later.
So now it's been played in your subconscious mind, in your spirit. You've been hearing this for years.
Years. Not even knowing what was going on. It doesn't really manifest until I do an album in 2011 called Worship in the Now. And when I was doing this album, I wrote all the songs. And the producer asked me, what are you going to call this album? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, you need to think about, what the title of this album is going to be. And so I started praying about that, trying to think about, and I was driving somewhere in between cities doing a show. And I thought about when Jesus met the woman at the well, and he said, the time is coming and it's now, when the true worshipers will worship me in spirit and truth. And then the term worship in the now came to me. And so then I wrote a song called Worship in the Now. And then that became the album. And then that starts the understanding and the breaking down of the revelation of now, which then produced the Now Conference. Then it produced the Now Church, and then the Now Podcast, et cetera, et cetera.
So this is your life theme. This is your life message, basically. And I love it because we our faith is now too. It's our God is now. And man, I'll just tell you what. There's so many people that including myself, that you look at stuff that you wish you could have done. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. If you would have put that time in, you'd be, where you'd like to be right now. I just finished one of my first books, and it was an amazing experience for me. And I thought, man, I could have done this, 10 years ago, if I just would have taken the time to do it. And now I'm ready to pump out 5 or 6 more books. I've got another one about to come out as well. So it's just like, it's like you say, it's like you build muscle, and it's like over time you begin to realize, man, it's just, we don't have, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm 53. I still feel good. I still feel like I could whip anybody's tail if they came my direction if I had to. I'm just being facetious. But I really do appreciate the now mindset, because we're not promised tomorrow. How much has a now mindset been instrumental in your personal and professional development? And could you give me like 2 nuggets that would help some people, that they've been on the fence, or maybe they are growing, but they're just not at the pace they want to be? What could you say to somebody to actually give them some leverage, not some hope, but inspire them to move the needle today?
Well, you brought up one of them already, and that is the thought pattern of woulda, coulda, and shoulda, right? Yeah. So one of the first things, if you're going to walk in your now, is you cannot continue to judge yourself from your past. Like you have to literally legally let yourself go of any mistakes, failures, by the way, not just of yourself, but of your parents or people that have done you wrong. That's the first thing, I would say. And then secondly, you have to really, really start respecting your current situation. Like you have to honor that. If you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, you've got to see that 1-bedroom apartment like it's the mansion you always dreamed of. If you're driving I don't know, a little Civic or whatever, you got to act like that's a Bentley. If you're working at, Chick-fil-A, you got to act like you're on Wall Street, and you got to honor where you are right now. Because if you don't respect where you are right now, you're never going to get to where you want to be later. And if you are faithful, in the scripture, I don't want to preach or nothing, but and you brought it up already. The scripture says, now faith is, so faith is, it's a current thing. It's a current thing. Faith is not a future thing. We talk like it's a future thing. It affects our future, but faith really can only operate in your now. Faith is. So if you're not looking at, the person in front of you and respecting and honoring, this as the greatest moment in your life. Like I see this, like what we're doing right now, this is the greatest platform I've ever been on. That's how I see this. And I'm not saying that because you're my friend and because I'm on right now, but that's really how I operate. And when you're in front of people, you have to see them, whoever that conversation, like when you speak to your son today, or when if you're on here and if your wife and your husband comes home, or whatever the thing is, you have to start. There are people that are at their church and they think somebody else's church is better, and this pastor is not that good or whatever. No, man, you have to see what you're doing as the best thing, because that's going to bring your performance up. That's going to bring your behavior up. That's going to bring your habits up. A lot of people think, when I get there, then I'm going to start, dressing up. When I get there, then I'm going to start taking this serious. No, that's not how it works. You got to take it serious now.
I love that, man. So as the man thinks, so is he. It's like saying, I'll start working out once I'm in shape, right? I mean, it's never going to happen, right? It just, and that can be the physical realm, spiritual realm, financial realm, any realm, right? So you've done several movies, but there's a new movie coming out, I'm hearing, and I'm understanding. Is that correct?
It is. We haven't started shooting it yet, so I can't say too much about it.
You can't say anything about it, okay?
No, not really. It'd be just too much. I'd be lying. You know what I mean? Like, with movies, the movie world, so many things can change. I could not be in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, they kick me out of the movie. So I got the script, I got the part, but we haven't started.
Yeah, okay, so it's a little premature. How about this new book we're talking about coming out?
So it's okay. We can talk about that. So I'm working on a new book called The Power of Yes. At least that's the current title, and it's really I would say a bio testimonial, self-empowering piece that will really chronologize what happens when you give God a yes for 365 days.
Wow. I love it, man.
So, man, there's a lot on the other side of your yes. And you're talking about catastrophic loss. You're talking complete vulnerability, and not being able to say no, not being able to say, I'm out, and just sticking with it no matter how tough it gets and how rewarding that is, and how powerful that is. So I really think it's going to help a lot of people, because I think we think that God can use maybes. God can't use a maybe. God can't use a think. I'll think about it. God can't use a Lord. It's I'm praying about it. None of that stuff is usable. God can only use a yes. So what will happen if you give God yes for one full year?
That's fabulous, man. And is the book is it like a devotional, or is there going to be like a section to break down for people what to do, or how does it work?
Well, I'll tell you, it really is just just a regular written book, but we are talking about adding a devotional at the end of each chapter, so that way it will be a good book for reading groups and for ministry groups, and just for educational groups that want to actually take this journey. Because when I said yes, I lost my brother-in-law, and then some months later I lost my brother, both unexpectedly, and I had to preach both of their funerals. I eulogized both of them while being completely brokenhearted, while being completely devastated. I lost my building at that time, and it was just I battled some of the biggest health scares in my life in that year. And you just would have thought that if you said yes to God, that it would meant that everything was going to go boom, and it was going to be this, and it was going to be great. And I'm not saying your yes is going to end up like mine, but what I am saying is if that was, because that was going to happen within that year, regardless if I said yes or not. Sure. But if I position myself with a yes, how would that affect me, and how would I be able to go through that in a successful way? And that's what the revelation of this book is all about. That, yeah, life is going to happen regardless, but how you come out of it is going to be determined whether you have a yes in your spirit, or rather you are on the fence, or if you're completely rejecting. And we know that's how grief works and why it can control so many people, because they don't want to let go. They don't want to give it the yes.
Man, that's good stuff, man. I love that. I'm looking forward to getting that book myself.
Yeah.
And when is that going to be out?
We're shooting for a fall date. So we're shooting for the last quarter of this year.
Fantastic. Let's talk about your church for just a minute. And I also want to talk about some of the mentoring you're doing, because you do an amazing job with still young adults, young people. Talk about your church. It's a diverse church in an area that, is not necessarily a diverse area when it comes to Sunday mornings, correct?
Correct.
Am I right about it? But yeah, right. You guys are breaking barriers and doing things, and you've expanded your tribe in a unique way. Just talk about your church a little bit, and sort of the vibe of your church, and how we can stream or watch your church if we'd like to.
Now Church is located in South Florida. We're in the Hollywood, Florida area, and the platform for all things Now Church is Now Church FL. Now Church FL. So you can stream it on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is Now Church FL, and then Instagram, all that stuff is Now Church FL. I'll tell you, I am in awe of our church, Rob. I sit back and look at it, and like everybody else, and just be like, okay, they are really doing this thing. 10 years ago, I like you talked about, after doing movies and all kind of stuff and TV hosting, God put it on my heart to come back. I never thought in 1,000 years. I know people hear pastors say that a lot, but you don't realize how true that is. Like, I never, and you know me. I never thought in 1,000 years I would ever be back in Florida, for one. And for two, certainly back in the church. Like, I cannot tell you how much that was not on my radar, and was going to live, grow old, and die and be buried, and never be responsible for nobody's church members.
Because you don't have to. I mean, you really don't have to. You've got enough platforms where you're traveling, you're doing music, you're doing all kinds of other things. You don't have to do a church, correct? I mean, this is something that's like, and we know about when you do church, it's not just the easiest thing to do. So, yeah. I mean, by taking on church, that's a huge, enormous responsibility. So to be able to get, free, so to speak, and now all of a sudden you're coming back to it. Wow. So it's amazing.
Oh, I mean, and the only reason why we can talk about this, y'all, is because both of us are pastors. So you trust me.
And we're not talking smack. We're not talking smack. Right. It's just, there's a lot of stuff. I'm thinking, because I just, planted 2 churches myself about 2 years ago out of my church, and we're doing some amazing things too. But it was a part of the call. But anyway, let's keep this rolling, man.
Yeah. So anyways, it's really been a great, exciting journey. I launched the church old school. Like, I didn't do all the proper things you should be doing with mailing lists and all that kind of stuff, and collecting some money to start with a budget and all that. We started with nothing, no building, no anything. And God has just blessed us over the years. We have a great program called SummerSlam Sport Camp, which ministers to over 300 kids every summer. It's a free camp that the church offers. And again, to your point, it's Spanish, white, black, all these different type of kids. We have all the different athletes come out and coach them and mentor them. We have all these great programs, our food pantry. We have an incredible outreach program for education. And of course, we just have some really good church. And it really is just amazing, because people say to me, how is it, because, if you keep it 100, like, a lot of times white people don't like to come to Black people church or Spanish people church. Not at least not in the South. South Florida, Florida is the South. People don't like to see it that way, but it's true. We have a lot of cultural barriers here, a lot of racial barriers here. And they say, well, how do you do it and whatnot? And I say, to be honest with you, if you preach the gospel and if you present the Spirit of God, man, it will attract any color of people, any race of people. And then if you yourself don't have those bents and those issues in your life, because the pastor's character or personality does weigh heavy in how the church operates and their personality. So I'm just a person that loves everybody. I've always, I've always been that way. I see everybody as regular people, and I don't go into the whole race culture thing. And as a result of that, that's the kind of church God has given us. And it's just really a thriving, exciting church. We're on the cusp of purchasing our first piece of property. So that's huge. That's huge. Because South Florida is the New York of the South. So property, as you know, is very, very expensive. But we're just excited and we're really blessed. But to be honest with you, I'm just as surprised as everybody else. Every time I walk in there, I'm like, I don't even know. This is all God. It's definitely not Javen.
No, it's very, very cool, man. And you do draw what's in your heart. You draw like-minded people, and so it's amazing to see what you're doing with that. Talk also about your podcast. Also, you've got a very, very, very cool, very funny, also empowering podcast. I see you on there cutting up, with your sidekicks and different guests, and there is a lot of fun, but there's a lot of information and a lot of growth mindset material that comes along with that as well, which I actually love that. So talk about your podcast a little bit.
Well, that speaks more to the now revelation in the sense like what you were talking about. We're not getting any younger, so you have to, whatever, if there are things you need to say, and if there's some wisdom keys that you need to put out there, that's why I'm really excited for you in doing this. I know you have a thousand things going on, but for you to take the time to present this platform, in a way that gives revelation and information to people that otherwise wouldn't get it. That's what now is about. It's about taking all those different angles, and podcast was another platform that different people were after me about. I certainly didn't want to do something else. I didn't want to, in these days, you also have to be careful, cancel culture, and, you got to be careful in certain things you say and all that. So I didn't want to have to worry about all of that. But I finally just went ahead and said, you know what, we have a lot to offer. I've lived long enough, done a lot. So let's do a platform where we can talk about everything and anything with anybody. So we have so many different guests that come on. Devon Franklin has been on with me. April Osteen, Joel Osteen's sister's been on with me. Multiple recording artists guests have been on with me. Actors, producers, of course, myself and my crew from the Now Church has been on. And it just has proven to be a great way to really talk about all types of issues. We don't get into politics that much. I really wish we could, because I got a lot to say about that, but
I know you do.
But I don't, because you're not supposed to talk about politics. But we do talk about community issues. We do talk about what's going on in our current generation. And of course, we talk about our faith. We talk about the word. We talk about our personal journeys, a lot of sensitive issues we get into, breakups, makeups, depression, all that kind of stuff. I really wanted to make sure, and I think that's something that's very important that, I want to say real quick, that one of the reasons why I hesitated on launching the church and going back in pastoralship was because I knew there were so many other things that I wanted to say and do. And I just want to say to anybody that's out there, ministry doesn't mean you cannot still be you. That's so key. So don't walk away from ministry just because you think you're not going to be able to be a businessman, or you're not going to be able to be that actor or be an entrepreneur or whatever. You can still do all that stuff and still be in ministry.
This is a great point, because some people sometimes actually think it's either or, right? It's actually sometimes, in some cases, it is either or, but in some cases it's and. You can be a pastor and you can be an entrepreneur. You can be a pastor. I mean, you're proving it right now. You can be a pastor and a producer. You can be a pastor and an actor. You can have multiple streams of income. You don't have to be, put in some religious box. Your life is a living example, and I love seeing it. As we're coming to kind of a landing a plane today, I would love just for you to just maybe just speak to someone who's going to be watching this and listening to this in the future. That is, they're right on the cusp of stepping out. They see the dream, they see the opportunity, but for whatever reason, they're just not in the now. They won't take that step. What is something you could say right now that could get that person, or a prayer or a word to get, or a revelation to get that person to take that leap, and a year later they're going to be glad they did?
Well, my signature scripture is a great question, by the way. My signature scripture is Philippians 1:6, being confident of this one thing, that he which has begun a good work in you will be faithful to complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. And I adopted that 19 years old when I lost my father to cancer. I knew at that point I was going to be fatherless, and anything that was going to happen for my life, it was all on me at this point. I was in the middle of college. I knew I was going to have to find money to finish college and buy a car and everything else that comes with adulthood. And what happened for me in that revelation, Rob, was that God confirmed in me that everything I was going to be, all the stuff I dreamed about, everything that I desired, that I already was. So I then had a conversation, a prayer, and it went something like this. I said, God, okay, what is my part? If I'm already the recording artist, if I'm already the TV host, if I'm already the actor, if I'm already the success, then what part do I play? If you've got all that taken care of. And he said to me, you just have to keep going. You cannot stop. Your only failure is the failure of quitting. And if you don't quit, you will succeed. And so I would say to anybody that's watching this, whenever you're watching that, always remember that you are already the success. That's not the issue. There's nothing that can stop you but you. If you want to get there sooner, then get going sooner. If you want to get there later, slow down and wait. But I was going to come back to Florida at some point, and I was going to pastor Now Church, whether I liked it or not. I was just going to pastor it at 60 or I was going to pastor it at 40. But either way, we were going to have to do, all of that was in the works. I was going to always be the actor. And of course, I probably should have started earlier. But, at 30-something years old, I make a huge career change. And we launched and we moved. So if you're feeling a little bit in a rut, or if you really realistically feel like you can't feel that motivation to go on, a couple of things I would say. Number one, check your environment. You might need to have a change of environment. Number two, check the key people around you. They say, if you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And you can love people, but sometimes you have to love people from afar and then get a new posse with you. Number three, I would say, begin to move based on faith rather than fear. Most of what we do is based upon what we hope doesn't happen. I'm going to put my seatbelt on because I hope I don't get in a car crash. I'm going to save my money, so I hope I don't lose my job one day. And everything is based on the fear of the outcome. What if you start making moves based on the faith of how I know things are going to outcome? And that's going to cause you to move in a more aggressive path and in a more aggressive way. Number four, and I talk about this in my book, always remind yourself of your age. Now, people say age ain't nothing but a number. Yeah, it ain't nothing but a number, but you do only have a certain period of time on this side of heaven. So when you remind yourself of your age, it'll tell you, or it'll give you a meter of kind of what you should and should not be putting up with. And this is where old age gets good.
I love it, man.
At 52, I don't put up with what I used to put up with at 22, right? At 32 or 32 or 42 or whatever the case. So always remind yourself of your age so that you know who you are and you walk into a place, because if you don't do that, you can walk into a meeting, you can walk into a job interview, you can walk into a restaurant and still think you're 18 and should be treated that way.
Man, you're so right about this. You are so right about this, man. That is such a true statement. And I just appreciate it. So act your age. I mean, you don't have to act old, but actually act your age. So I want to just repeat this again. So check your environment, check your relationships, begin to move based on faith, and always remind yourself of your age.
Of your age. Yeah. And then when you move on faith, add to that, not the second half of that is not on fear. So move based on faith, not on fear, because fear will always show up. Let me say it this way. Fear will show up first. Always. Faith doesn't show up first. Faith, you have to work your faith. But fear is going to, the first thing you wake up in the morning, you feel a pain. Oh, it must be, or it must be something bad. Fear always shows up. So you gotta reject that fear, and you gotta say, no, I'm going to operate in faith.
Two things I'm going to ask before we land this plane today. Did you ever feel fearful in these times? And did you ever feel like quitting and giving up in these times?
Yeah. Short answer. Yes. Yes. And yes. But I think that for as far as the fear is concerned, and I'm glad you asked that, because it allows me to say this. So doing things doesn't mean you have to do it full of faith. You just have to do faith. Here's what I learned about faith. And this is really good. And I just learned this, and I just taught it the other day. Faith is not a mental, it's not even so much of a spiritual strength that you have. Faith in Judaism, the kind of faith Jesus was talking about, is persistence. It's just a consistency. So faith is not about thinking yourself up into some fictitious place. Faith is just about, no matter what, I'm going to keep going because I know in the end is God's got it all under control. So when you're operating in faith, what you're saying is, even if I'm scared, I'm going to keep going. Even if I feel like quitting, I'm going to keep going. Even if I'm not going to do my best, my voice is not. You know how many times I've sung when my voice wasn't the best? You know how many times I've preached when I didn't necessarily feel that confident about the message? You know how many times I've loved somebody even when I thought, you know what, they're not really the most lovable person? See, faith causes you to press beyond the circumstance or the situations. So, you know, again, when you start thinking on that level and that realm of faith, all of a sudden fear, quitting, all that kind of stuff, that becomes child's play. Like, you know, you can think about it, but it's like,
it's not an option.
It's not an option. It's not an option. You can think about quitting all the time. I mean, you're not human if you don't. And I don't think that you are human if you don't get afraid. You know what I mean? If you're not afraid sometimes. The most intimidating moments I've ever had is right before going on stage. Like, people say, do you get nervous? Of course. If I'm not nervous, I'm probably not going to do well, you know?
Yeah, true.
So it's like, you do it nervous, you do it scared, you do it feeling like, you know, quitting sometimes, but you just keep on going. I will say this though, if it starts becoming too much of a pressure, then you have to counter that. You have to do something about that and ask yourself again, why do you have these fears? Who has been speaking negative stuff? Who's been giving you those ideas in your head? And then if you feel like quitting, that might be a sign that it's time to have your reset. You know, there's something different between reset and restart. Restart is cutting everything down and start from scratch. Reset, just pause. You know, you can reset your phone. You know, you can reset a computer and it'll start working better. So sometimes you have to, and a reset could look like a staycation. A reset could look like just, you know, going to the beach and just turning your phone off for a day or two. A reset can look like changing your diet. You know this from health. I started working out. You're a big reason why I started working out back in the day. Back in the day.
Oh,
you know, if you've never worked out before, man, try. You'll be surprised. You know what that will do for your mental capacity and as well as your health. So, you know, it's just certain things that you can be in. I guess the word is intentionality. Your now represents eternity. You're never in your past. You're never in your future. You're always in your now.
That's good, man. Can you say it one more time, please?
Your now is eternal. You're never in your past. Some people still think they're in high school. You're not in high school anymore. It's over. You're never going to be in your future. People say, when I get there, guess what? When you get there, guess where you're going to be? You're going to be in your now. So you're never in your past. You're never in your future. You're always in your now. So if you can't respect, if you can't get up, if you can't love, if you can't have joy, if you can't operate in peace right now, it's never going to be. And what's going to happen is you're going to keep having a past that you keep building that's full of non-peaceful days, non-loving days, non-trustworthy days. You're creating a catalog of negativity because you keep not allowing it to flow right now.
That's really good, man. So if you're not faithful in your now, you're not going to be faithful in your future. If you don't honor your now, you're not going to honor your future. So it really does start with what you do right now, doesn't it?
Whatever you have, and that's what the Bible says. That's not even Javen revelation. The scripture says, when you're faithful over a few things, I will make you rulers over many. You have the opportunity. Jesus said the time has come and is now. So you have to really, really understand that however you may feel, if you are in between relationships, you're going through a divorce, you're a widow, if you are in between jobs or the job you have is not paying you enough money, if you are experiencing some health issues and whatnot. I remember going through that, you know, I remember, you know, having to have surgery and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to go, and then it's almost like the devil goes, all right, you're the now guy. What you going to do? You know, are you going to mope and go? It's like, no. Okay, here's my now moment to grab a hold of faith and to say, I can do this and I can get through this and all will be well. And okay, what are my next steps? So for those of you that are that have really gone through some tough situations. And I don't want to discredit how you feel, and I want to discredit a loss in your like how my family recently went through loss. So I don't want to discredit that, but I want you to stop asking the question why. Why did it happen to me? Why did I have to go through that abuse? Why did she walk out on me? Stop asking the question why and ask the question how. How do you want me to go through this, God? How do I get to this? What is my next step? And what do I need to be doing? Because I think if you begin to ask that question, and I think if you begin to have that dialogue in your mind, I think it would then begin to open doors for you, because life is a journey. And that's the thing about it. It's not going to stop just because you lost someone. It's not going to stop because you got fired. It's not going to stop because, someone broke your heart, or you found out your friend ain't really your friend. They've been stabbing you in the back all this time. Life doesn't stop for nobody. So you have to begin. So don't ask that why question. That why question will have you stuck and sitting there,
right?
Passes by. So that's not the way to go.
Love that, man. So quit asking why and ask how. That's really, really good. Well, Javen Campbell, man, I want to tell you, it's really a blessing to have you on the podcast today. I'm looking forward to having you back on the podcast and on my program in the very near future. We'll be talking about that also. So thank you, man. God bless you, bro.